Come on up, Mac Mac.
Hey, what's up?
How you doing, buddy?
Oh, not bad. Pretty good today, actually.
So, what do you want to talk about?
Well, government subsidies for hiring minorities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Uh, like, I just asked the question before and it turned into kind of a crapshoot, but I was just hoping to have an honest discussion about it.
Sure. Um, so the basis of what I care about is that I want there to be more goods and services available to people. And the reason why is because that everybody has their own level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs that must be met, and people have their own things that they find valuable, and things that if they just simply had these basic necessities met, as well as like the access to do the things that they enjoy doing, they live out more satisfying lives as a result. And so I want to have as much trade as possible that allows that to happen. And so the question is that whether or not that there exists barriers in society that prevent this from happening, and if it's just like if it's a barrier that ought be there, or if it's some barrier that is bullshit. One example of bullshit barrier is where you have minorities who have fundamentally lost in terms of their socioeconomic outcomes. They were put into redlining districts. They specifically had to go to zip codes that had bad schooling, and the schools themselves were underfunded because the property tax value was quite low in those ghetto areas. And so they got a bad education. And then because they got a bad education, they end up being undereducated. And because they are undereducated, they don't go to college. And because they are undereducated and go to college, they end up having more babies. And because they have a bunch of babies, they're even poorer. And then those babies end up being poor. And then there's just more like undereducated people. And so I say that like, hey, these are like systemic issues that existed in the past and are just kind of like bullshit barriers in the future. And so what I want to do is like try to accelerate against that and like make like a society that is more equitable for people to like succeed.
Yeah, we should be dealing with equality, right?
Um,
That should be the goal.
no, not
Yeah.
necessarily. I'm not saying that everything should be equal. I'm saying that like opportunity should be equal.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah. Then if that's what you mean, then sure.
Yeah. So do you find it equal when there's government subsidies for hiring minorities?
Yeah, there are. And I think that there's a
Do,
reason to it.
I agree. I mean, I'm not against the idea totally. Like I just think there's better ways, and I do think that it is not equal when you do this for certain people. I think government policies should apply to everybody, right?
Okay. Well, what would you do?
Well, I think we need to end type of racism. We need to show people that people aren't different based on their race. Would you
Uh,
agree with that?
well, I agree with you, but like, would you say that like did people use race to subjugate those types of people?
I agree right now there is racism.
Well, no. I'm not
But
saying right now that there's racism. I'm asking, um, do you think that people used racism in the past to like they used
yeah,
race to push people down?
yeah.
Okay. So why can't I reverse address that?
Well, I think I feel that the policy itself is racist.
Well, Mac, let me give you an analogy. I see a I see someone slashed a tire, right? And then I go to start fixing the tire. You say, whoa, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm fixing the tire. And then you go, no, you should worry about the spark plugs. Don't look at the tire. What? Don't look at the tire. You don't want to be addressing that tire. That's the way that I see it, right?
So you
Racism
think
was
I'm
used in
telling
the
you to look at the
past.
spark plug and not the tire?
Yeah. Well, no, I'm saying to fix the tire, right? And my
Yeah,
analogy is that Racism was used in the past to subjugate them, so I can use the fact of their race to undo that through affirmative action.
But now you're just applying it to other. You're applying it in a different way.
Would you say that is because I don't think it's racism at all. And the reason why I don't think it's racism is because it is not the exclusion, but the inclusion. It is literally the exact opposite.
It's the exclusion of the white people.
You think that white people get excluded by hiring minorities?
Ever since that government policy was instituted in Canada, I had way harder time getting a job. And I go to Tim Hortons, pretty much every single Tim Hortons in my city. There's not one white person I see working there anymore. At Walmart, there's one white person I saw working out of all the employees at the East End Walmart in my town.
I'm not disagreeing with your personal anecdote, but the problem is that when I'm looking at like overall statistics, white people aren't having a hard time getting a job.
Well, I'm telling you right now that yes, I did. My neighbor did. My friend did. Yeah.
And maybe even in your area. Why not? Sure. But what about the entire country? Are white people just being pushed out of society? Or are white people just as successful as they were?
Okay. If you were a business owner, are you going to hire the person that costs less or the person that costs more?
Costs less.
There you go.
It also depends. I mean, you could have a more premium product and then you end up going with somebody that's more experienced and so would cost more in that aspect. It just depends on the business, what their needs are.
Do you think a business should hire on their ability or by their race?
On their ability, of course. But I also think that you should look at like, I think that like when it comes to like the actual business itself, I think that they should do with what's like most logical for them, right?
Well,
and so like, but what I'm arguing is, that you have stratifications in society that I legitimately believe that by having having more equitable access to be able to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, it makes it society better because they become valuable economic players. And then because they're valuable economic players, both white people and black people benefit because white people and black people have businesses. So
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so then what's wrong with diversity hiring again?
Okay, as you said yourself, the business is most likely going to hire the person that costs less, right?
No, it depends.
You know businesses that like to pay more for employees that do the same thing?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
There are people that want to see businesses or that want to see people that are more experienced versus people that are less experienced. Those people cost more, and because they cost more, they still go for that because they just don't want to like spend all that time training people. That happens all the time.
That would be hiring based on ability.
Okay, but you're asking the cost thing, and I'm giving you a rebuttal, saying, well, a business. Yeah, sometimes they do hire in terms of cheaper, but they also hire in terms of more expensive.
Of my question, whereas if they can do the same job.
Okay, so like assuming they could do, yeah, I mean, I suppose that they would go for something cheaper, unless if there could be like a level of nepotism. However, that happens too. But sure, let me just take your word for it. Yeah, just whatever, just very generalistic, cheaper. Does that mean? Do you think that white people are losing out of jobs?
I feel it.
Okay, cool. Do you think that that's the case for you're in Canada, right?
Yep.
Do you think that that's the case for Canadians like all over? Like you think that like everybody is just like, oh man, I'm white. I can't get a job anymore. What do I do?
This policy isn't very old. I think we're going to start seeing
Okay,
more
so
and
you're
more
not
of this.
seeing that. We're just assuming that could happen.
I don't know. I can't find the statistics for it.
So from a macroeconomic standpoint, by having more economic players, that's good for business. Okay. And then the second thing is that we have had in the United States lots and lots of affirmative action, both in the colleges as well as diversity hiring. And the end result is that white people don't we don't see the job statistics go down for white people. That's at least in the United States. I don't know what the case is in Canada, but in the United States, where they have done a lot of diversity hiring because of all of the issues that have happened because of redlining and all of the history involved, it's obvious that it is that we're better off by having the diversity hiring as opposed to not.
Let me ask you this. Does this create something for people to fight over because there is this state? Like if that law was not there, right? Now I'm not saying I'm not against this being for schooling because I think education should be a thing. Like we definitely should be trying to educate everybody, right? But when people see states of inequality, like a government giving something that's only applicable to some people and not all the people in the country, do you agree that this gives people a thing to fight over?
It could.
Yeah, it often does.
But I think, you know what I think about that?
Go ahead.
Fuck them. Fuck them racist motherfuckers.
Wow.
Fuck them.
That's a pretty horrible take.
Look, let me hear. Okay, here. Let me fucking let me. I'll tone it down here. So, how do you feel about the Civil Rights Act?
Good thing.
Good thing. So, having a protected class is necessary in the United States, you think then, right?
Well, I think it was trying to address a problem that they were having.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, segregating the people where, like, certain people are sitting to the back of the bus. That's, like, basically.
Well, not just that. I mean, they were stopping them from entering businesses, getting jobs. Yeah. You know, it was a stunning amount of low-end workers that were minorities. And, you know, the ones that had the better jobs, it was just white people. Right now, it's because of diversity hiring and inclusion, and as well as affirmative action. Now it's you have a more even distribution. Specifically, like that, there's a more even distribution of blacks to whites that is more akin to what the global the population of black people in the United States. So I don't see that as a bad thing. I see that that's a good thing, right? You were saying that like by giving this right that you're talking about, it makes people fight, right? But at the same time, in the very same breath, you say that it is also a good thing. So what is it?
No. You're conflating two different things. I agree. The civil rights thing was correct. It gave rights that people didn't have, right?
No, it's not that it gave rights that people didn't have. What it did was that it prevented people from discriminating against specific people for their race. They say you can't do that anymore.
Yes. Okay.
Right. So that made them protected classes. Right. And so now that there's a difference between white people and black people, that is a difference. Right. And so you're saying that it makes an instance where it fights. However, it actually didn't increase fighting. What it did is that it made black people more equal to white people, and it made society better. So I'm lost as to like this idea that it's about fighting when the reality is that it made things better.
I'm not arguing against the civil rights movement, because the civil rights movement was trying to bring equality, right? It's trying to say, hey, look, we're all the same. Like, we're all got the same opportunities. You know, we shouldn't discredit a person based on their race. Correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. So when a business is going to hire a person based on their race because they're cheaper, if both races have the same ability to do the job, then this is not the same as the civil rights movement.
Well, I didn't say that it was the same as the civil rights movement.
Then why are you bringing it up?
Well, because you said that there's instances where if one person gets treated differently over the other, it causes fighting. And I'm saying, well, no, that's not the case.
Yeah.
The civil rights
Hence,
movement is a really good example of that. It lessens the fighting, not increases the
no, no,
fighting.
no, no, no. The civil rights. There was riots because of blacks being treated differently, right?
Yeah. And remember what I said originally?
That I'm just saying.
Fuck them, right? Fuck
Yeah,
those
yeah.
racist fucks.
I mean, not very,
What do you
not a
mean?
very
What am
good
I supposed to
response.
side with the racists?
No, no, I'm not saying you got to side with the racists. I just find that a very lacking response.
It's not a lacking response. It's very well thought out. Trust me, it really is. Because like at the end of the day, the United States is better off by having the Civil Rights Act, right? And I
Okay.
understand you agree with the Civil Rights Act, but you can at least acknowledge that black people had it rough in the United States, right? And even
Yeah, I
today,
do.
they don't have the same opportunity as white people do, right? They're
Yeah,
still in zip codes. You go to Martin Luther King Drive, right?
I,
And it's mostly
I,
black people. Why is that?
there's many reasons why that is,
Because of
and
redlining.
I'm gonna agree that there are people that think black people are an inferior race and treat them differently because of race. I'm
Okay.
not one of those people though.
I'm
I
not
judge
saying you are.
people. No, I know, but I'm just saying, like, I think it's the real important thing is to understand that race doesn't make a person who they are.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I look
Right.
at the current negative repercussions of race and seek to reverse that because it's some bullshit barrier that needn't be there.
Yeah, and would you agree that if the black people were not being treated differently, that the civil rights movement, the riots that happened, probably would not have happened?
What?
If the black people were not treated differently, do you think the civil rights movement would have happened?
No, it wouldn't have. If everybody was
See,
treated the
see,
same, then yeah, it would have been
see
no
what
Civil
I'm
Rights Act needed because they're treated the same.
now you see what I'm saying now. When somebody gets treated differently, it gives them a reason to fight.
I, I'm sorry. The Civil Rights Act was used to stop people from treating other people differently, right? So this is why it's fundamentally different. The affirmative action in terms of like diversity hiring and like just unabashed racism. Racism is working on the basis of exclusion, whereas affirmative action is working on the basis of inclusion. And it's using the same exact tool that racists used to discriminate in order to include them. That's where I'm at. Because it's a bullshit barrier that exists still to this day that shouldn't be there.
Okay, do you agree that when one race is treated differently than the other, that can cause fighting?
It could, or in instances where it
Well, I mean,
doesn't.
it did in the riots, right?
Yeah, and then it stopped. Remember when I said fuck them? Like, why would I side with the rate? Like, yeah, let's go with the rate. Let's undo the Civil Rights Act. Let's abide by the racists
I'm
so that way
not
they don't
saying
fight.
to undo the Civil
I'm not.
Rights
I'm not.
Act,
I'm not saying
dude.
you are. I'm not saying you are. I'm saying that like I can make the implication. It's like, okay, well, we want to treat them all the same, and so we're going to undo the Civil Rights Act, and so like we're going to side with the racists here, and then they can just continue discriminating against black people. Like, no, of course not. And you wouldn't agree with that either. Right. And so the end result is sometimes you have to treat people differently because the way that we use to discriminate them is a specific way. So I go back again thinking about the like how I have a blown out tire and I'm here trying to change out the tire and you're telling me that I should be focused on the spark plugs. It doesn't make any sense.
That's not what I'm saying.
All right.
Okay. Would you agree, at least, that when there was, if there was equality, where the black people wasn't being treated differently in the United States, that there probably would not have been the riots over that, right? For that
Repeat that.
reason. Would you agree that if black people were not treated differently in the United States, that the riots that were caused from black people being treated differently would probably not have happened?
Correct.
Right.
But
So
that's a
when
great Dr. Seuss world, but that's not reality. Reality is that people treated them differently because they look different, and that they
I'm
also considered them
saying
as
this is
inferior
what's
from like a
real,
different.
man. If you just stop interrupting for a second, just answer the question, and then I can move on to the next question. We might get somewhere.
All right, I'll try to make it less verbose.
Okay. Now, do you think that people have the feeling that we're being trampled on now when they make a law like the one in Canada that gives government subsidies for hiring minorities?
Yes, but I think it's unfounded.
I'm not saying if it's founded or not. I'm just saying this is going to cause conflict, right? And the real thing to get rid of racism, do you think that if everybody just realized that race does not determine who you are, that would help?
Um, yeah, it would help because it removes the
I think
barriers.
I think definitely because people start seeing these people as other people and not something inferior or whatever to them or superior even, right? Because there's reverse
I mean, like
racism, like
maybe over time, like if there's like no more like anybody like judging somebody on the basis of like the color of their skin, then yeah, I would be like, okay, we don't need this anymore. But we don't live in that world.
no, but maybe if like this is I'm not saying you have an answer to this question. I don't even have an answer to this question. Okay, would finding a way to what way could we try to find to make people see other races just as the person themselves and not judge them by the race?
Yeah.
And it wasn't a yes or no question. It was like, what do you think we could do? It was a very difficult question. I don't even know,
Huh.
right?
I mean, like obviously, like we need to remove barriers that cause socioeconomic conditions to be the way they are. The separation, it would remove a lot of stereotypes, and because by increasing
Yeah, yeah.
socioeconomic conditions, it reduces crime, reduces that poverty, it reduces the negative stereotypes, and all of a sudden they're equal. I mean,
Yeah,
that would
but
take a long time, decades even, but
yeah,
I
but
mean,
it
it's
might take a
there.
long time. It might take a long time. But I mean,
There
I'm
will
thinking more
also
like,
always be haves and have nots. I mean, there will always be people that they just want to subjugate people because they're not like them.
maybe,
But this
maybe
is
that's
kind of where I
possible to
go
get
back
over,
to
right?
fuck them. I don't give a shit about those people. Like, I'm never going to change their
Yeah,
mind. They don't care. They just want to
racist.
be a racist piece of shit. Like, that's all it is.
I agree. Racists, they have no place with me. I agree. Fuck them. I don't really, if they want to institute some kind of racist thing, fucking fuck them. I
Well,
agree with that.
I mean, when they bring up that segregation bullshit, right? I'm just like, yes, we should segregate men because they cause most of the violent crime.
I know, but
They
what
was
I'm
talking all
looking
that
for,
good shit a second ago.
I'm
Sorry.
trying to find a solution, right? Like,
Well, I
can we?
gave you a solution. I think affirmative action is one thing that helps.
Well, it
You're
doesn't
saying
really
it's not
make people
helping.
realize that the other people are normal people. It's just
What?
now companies are just going for who's cheaper. It doesn't make people
No,
realize
no,
that,
it doesn't go
people are
after it.
other
Who's
people.
cheaper? They get an incentive to hire to divert to considering diversity hiring. By the way, just so you know, like you're aware that like companies that push for diversity hiring actually do make more profit. Did you know that?
Um, of course, in Canada, if they have a thing where they say this person will give you money if you hire this person over this
No, no,
person, and
no,
keep
no.
on hiring that
I'm
other
not
person,
talking
of
about
course they're
that. I'm
going to
talking
make more
about they just
profit.
make more money. They just make more money because there's a more diverse experience set.
Sure,
I'm
I
not
think
even
that's
kidding. Like
irrelevant
that's
to the point that
literally.
I'm making. No, sure, I'm not going to disagree with that. I just think it's irrelevant to the point that I'm making.
Well, I'm just saying that like not only is there like a state incentive, but there's even an economic incentive. So it's like on both ends of the spectrum, it's just a good idea to diversity hire. It's just a good idea. Like it makes pragmatic sense,
Yeah,
and
I'm
it makes sense in terms of like an ethical or moral sense as well.
I'm not against diversity hiring. I just I have a bad feeling when the government gives subsidies for hiring minorities, and that seems to create a thing where now just this other people are getting put under,
Wait,
right? I feel like now we've
you
created
said that
a
you're not
conflict
against
on the other
diversity
way.
hiring, and then you're saying, but I have a problem with diversity hiring. Like, what do you?
No, diversity hiring is hiring people of different races. Is diversity hiring giving government subsidies for hiring minorities? Is that diversity hiring?
Uh, I'm sorry. Say that again. Say
I,
it again.
is diversity hiring giving government subsidies for hiring minorities, or is
Sure.
diversity hiring people of different races?
Yeah, it's both. It's both of those things.
Well, then I have a problem with one and not the other.
Okay, that's weird. I mean, it's accomplishing the same thing. What's the problem? I look at things in terms of outcomes. Like, what will this do if I do X, Y, Z? And like, I see this bullshit barrier, and it makes life worse, not just for black people or other minorities, but also white people. Because, like, in turn, you end up with more theft. You end up with more crime, less desire of like the protection of private property. It it just makes life worse for pretty much everybody, white and black people. And so it's like, all right, remove the bullshit barrier. It's very simple to me. It doesn't make sense to go against affirmative action on any of the levels.
I would just say let's try to make it so that people see each other as equals and not judging each other on race, so that and but we still
Well, I do
continue
see them as
to
equals.
hire based on ability and not
I
by
do
race.
see them as equals. I'm saying that I see that as that white people have got a head start.
Then we should work on what prevents that, like why that is, and to get that mentality, right?
Yeah,
Because
like education.
it's not like there was actually government subsidies for hiring white people
Are you
before,
against
right?
affirmative action? Like
I
for
don't think so.
schools?
I don't think so.
Well, that's good. I agree. I'm in favor of affirmative action as well. I was really upset when I saw that the Supreme Court pushed it down. Did you know, by the way, that Justice Clarence Thomas, did you know that he was a direct recipient of affirmative action? He got to go to Yale because of affirmative action. And if he did not, if affirmative action wasn't a thing, he likely would have been too old and wouldn't have gone to Yale and therefore wouldn't have been a Supreme Court representative. And then there he is, his just Republican fat ass, just sitting there, removing the thing that helped push him up. This is the same thing as the guy that there was like a fire and there was like a ladder, and this dude kicked that fucking ladder as soon as he hit the ground and was safe. Killing everybody else
Yeah.
inside the
I
building.
mean,
It is so
sounds like a
hypocritical.
politician. Yeah,
It
yeah.
is
Sounds like a
horrendous.
politician. They do crap like that all the time.
If it was a politician, I wouldn't care as much, but it's a Supreme Court justice. It's a lot worse than a politician. The Supreme Court justice has so much more reach over the politician. Anyway, I had a really
Depends
good
on the
talk with you.
politician, doesn't it?
I had a really good talk with you. Let me go ahead and I'm going to let you have the last word, and then we'll bring on the next person. Okay?
Okay.
Did you have anything to say?
Um, no, I guess not. I
Okay.
guess it's over.
It's good talking to you, Mac Mac.